Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here, and thank you very much to the organizers for the invitation. I've been thinking about the invitation also that Manfred made to me at the start of this intervention, which is, let's just not be negative, let's be positive. Which is why I think I'll start by telling you something private or a bit private about me. To me, innovation, new technologies, innovation is like ice cream. I love ice cream. I will compete for the title of the world's ice cream pig. My record is 27 ice creams in an afternoon. And the problem, of course, with ice cream is that it's good, it's great, but it makes you fat, it can make you ill, it can add to too much fats in the blood, and so on and so forth. And when I look at innovation and I look at new technology and, the impact of new technologies, I can give you some good news. And the good news is that even in conservative law schools, we are teaching technology, and certainly in mine, we have taught it for 30 years. Now, I don't know how I can explain to you what it means to people like myself who started university in the 1970s, that when we started talking about law and technology in the end of the 70s and beginning of the 80s, everybody thought us crazy, right? And even today, perhaps some people think us crazy. Because when you look at technology and what it can do such a lot. And certainly one of the greatest and most positive things that I find that technology has done is that it has made us think more about ourselves. And when I talk about privacy, I don't just want to talk about the traditional part of privacy. I'd like to talk about that part of privacy, which of course, privacy is a fundamental human right. Everybody who has read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights will not contest that. It's there in Article 12. And for all the lawyers in the room, it's in Article 17 of the ICCPR. And for the European lawyers, it's Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. But in reality, when you have privacy, I'd like to remind everybody that it's not only a standalone right, but very importantly to me, it is also an enabling right. It's a right that enables you to do other things too. And one of the good news pieces that I have to give you, since the last time I saw Manfred, in fact, the United Nations Human Rights Council has passed a resolution where it said clearly that the right to privacy should also be considered as an enabling right to the free development of personality. So permit me to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about personality, right? Today is the first time that I've met Olivia, right? To my left. But why is Olivia Olivia? Who decided that Olivia is going to be here today giving a presentation using slides in Spanish, speaking in English, and worrying about fact-checking? How did she get to there from her education and from her childhood, right? And I'll probably have to buy her an ice cream after this because I haven't discussed or obtained permission to use her as my case study. But what I'm getting to is this. The right to free development of personality is something which is not considered to be as yet a universal right, but it is one of the most important rights in some countries. So in Germany, this is often recognized as Persönlichkeitsrecht. It's recognized as a right, as an overarching right in many countries, including Romania, including Hungary, including many of the Nordic countries, and it's something which has grown. And this is why, to me, it has been good news that as we talk about privacy, thanks to reflecting further on technology, we also think about why we are who we are and how we become who we are. So if, for example, you were to follow the debate in the United Kingdom on how they got to their new law, which was much criticized, the Investigative Powers Act, the law on surveillance, you had some very interesting parts where you had people who come from a minority, such as the LGBTQI minorities, coming out openly in Parliament and saying, hey, look at me, I'm an ex-commissioner of police, but I could only explore my sexuality thanks to the new technology of the internet, which gave me the privacy to go out there and find out more about myself. And I must say that in these years as Special Rapporteur, Manfred and friends, it's been really touching to see how many people, including senior people in government, in NGOs, have come out to me over lunch or dinner, made it a point to tell me, Joe, keep on talking about the right to personality and how important privacy is to personality. Because at the same time, though, like ice cream, we have to think a bit about the bad parts too, right? So one of my most recent cases, about which will go public later, so please don't tweet this for now, but one of my most recent cases involves gender. One of the dimensions that I am very keen on in my mandate is that of privacy and gender, but it's gender and the use of technology. So let's quickly reflect upon one of the things which came up in February especially, in January, February of this year. In January, February, it became more public that a technology which most of us are using, our mobile phone technology. Anybody in the room does not have a smartphone? Okay, there we are, QED, right? So this phone in some places is used to pay your driving license online. It's used to pay your fines online if you get a parking ticket. But in Saudi Arabia, it's not only used to pay your driving license or your parking tickets, it's also used to keep tabs on the women on your life. Because the Ministry of the Interior there offers you on the app, under the Saudi law of custodianship, the possibility of choosing the airports where you block your sister or mother or whoever else you're trying to control, where she can leave, can she not leave, and if she tries to leave without your permission, you get a text message saying, hey. So in one sweep on that app, we are seeing 3 fundamental human rights being broken. Number one, the first right in the ICCPR is the right to equality between men and women. And then we have, going on to Article 12 of ICCPR, the right to free movement. Article 17, the right to privacy. So if we have at least 1,000 Saudi women every year who are trying to run away from that kingdom, many of them, the first thing they do is they steal the phones of all the men in the family, hide them, render them useless in some cases, and try to move out of the country without being monitored. I'm just choosing one example out of many, just to make you think once again of some of the bad parts of our technologies. One of the things about smartphones is, of course, the difference that they're making in our lives. A smartphone is an incredibly useful piece of technology. But when the representative of the United Kingdom to the Human Rights Council asked me which is the technology which is, I think, more dangerous at this moment in time, I replied the smartphone. Because it's so convenient that its very convenience makes people become more lazy when it comes to their rights. It makes people say, oh yes, accept, 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 accept. And what on earth are you accepting, right? So, if I were to stop for 5 minutes and talk to you about the 6 priorities I have set for my mandate, I would be including in those priorities security and surveillance. You wouldn't be surprised to find that out in a mandate which was born out of the Snowden affair. But I also include health data. I also include big data and open data. I also include the use of personal data by corporations. I include a better understanding of privacy, and I also include privacy and children. Because in all of these cases, we are looking at the likelihood and the possibility of the technology both improving our life and making it easier, more convenient, but also potentially locking down on the freedom or part of the freedom to develop our own personality. And let me explain a bit more why I'm concerned about this, before I get on to some of the advantages that I see. Let's go back to a year ago last year, a year and 2 months, right? I'm sure you've all heard about the Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? When the data we understand of about 85 million people at least, their Facebook data was used to do something which most of them never really gave their consent to use. So when they pressed accept, accept, or they answered the surveys set up by a psychologist in Cambridge, they didn't fully understand the impact of what they were about to do. And this is where we come in to a very serious problem, which is, to what extent do we want to become manipulable, right? Because the problems with the technology, and now we have a major job on our hands from a human rights point of view. Because all of you who are using this technology, and even I who try hard to cheat using this technology, so I carry 4 phones with me, different jurisdictions, different chips, some of them registered, some not registered. I try to have fictitious girlfriends. I try to send all kinds of silly messages just to see who on earth is monitoring my phones. But why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I'm trying to test the extent to which I am being monitored, the extent to which I am being profiled. Because the more that people know about Olivia or myself, the more that those companies know things about us, the more they think that they can offer to us those things which we want to hear about. And this is where our right to develop ourselves in a free manner starts to evaporate. Because if you go back to Cambridge Analytica had two main divisions. One was commercial and the other political. But in either case, the objective was to manipulate decision-making. To manipulate commercial decision-making, what you do with your money when you go out to buy something, and to manipulate political decision-making. What you do with your vote when you go to vote for somebody. And unfortunately, these processes are not transparent to more than 90% of the general public. When the general public is busy keying in things, according to surveys that we've carried out, they will notice if, for example, that they have just been searching for a holiday in Bali and all of a sudden they're showered with advertisements for holidays in Bali, they will notice that. But generally, the extent to which they are being profiled escapes unnoticed. And it's only now that we're suddenly waking up and saying, shucks, did Trump really win? I know there are other implications of that question, but never mind. I mean, and you say, to what extent was that manipulated? And then you look at the Brexit and you say, to what extent was that manipulated? So there already, as you see, this is not only a matter of privacy from a pure individual point of view, but it's also dealing with democracy, dealing with the way we go around taking decisions as to how the distribution of power in society should look. So that is why when, and I go back to the point I made about the declaration, the endorsement that the Human Rights Council gave to privacy and other human rights as an enabling right in March of 2017, it didn't just mention privacy. It talked about the free development of personality, but it also talked about other rights, like freedom of expression, like freedom of association, like freedom of religion. Because whichever way you look at it, these rights are moving forward together. And an attack on one of these rights is sometimes often an attack on all of those rights. And unfortunately, the worst thing is, most of the time, we don't even realize they're being attacked. Because the technologies afford us the ability to have great convenience, great usefulness, without realizing the great risks that are associated with it. So, this is my first time to Buenos Aires, but after 3-4 days, I've been noticing all the automated stuff that's going around the city, right? So once again, don't quote me, please, and don't tweet for now. At least give me the time to present my report to the government. But have you seen all the automated number plate recognition systems there are? So your car whizzes by and your number goes up. And have you seen all the added cameras going up equipped with facial recognition? Yes. And incidentally, have you seen all the safeguards in place? Please write to me about the safeguards, because I'm asking questions about the safeguards. So you see, that technology could be very useful, perhaps in catching criminals or terrorists or finding people who haven't paid the license on their car. But that same technology could be abused to impose a dictatorship which would make certain other dictatorships look like a kindergarten. And one of the problems that people don't realize about technology is the great difference that it has made in the manpower or woman power or person power that it requires to run a dictatorship. You see, so one of my professorships, as Manfred was talking about, is in the Netherlands. Now you go to the Netherlands and start a discussion about social security cards and social security numbers. And the same argument is thrown at you as we have for the past 70 years. No, we have to be very careful what we put down there, because Hitler, when he marched into the Netherlands, he used that information to identify the Jews and persecute the Jews. The great difference is that Hitler had a little army of clerks going through the cards, thousands of them, going through the cards to find out the word Jude, right? You don't need that anymore. Today, if you want to take control of a country, the number of people you need has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, because you're only as good as your technical team. And this is one of the scary things about technology, because we've moved to a stage now where even the laws that I was busy writing 30 years ago, some of them are quite defunct now. Why is that? That's because we were writing laws about databases being made by governments. And yes, of course, governments can still make databases. But with all due respect, whether I choose Olivia or somebody sitting at the back, and I had to ask the question, so who knows more about Olivia? Is it the government of Buenos Aires, the French government, or Google, or Facebook, or Twitter? And hey, what's the use of having safeguards if some key safeguards are not maintained as to what a government can access from the private companies? And what the private companies increasingly know about citizens is staggering. It's just staggering. It makes secret services look like, as I said, kindergarten. Because it's literally, and this is going to show my generation, you know, the music from my generation, it's literally like the police. Every step you take, every breath you take, every step you take, I'll be watching you, right? Because that's what we're doing, right? I only wish I could sing it to you, but I can't. Because the extent to which data is being compiled about each and every one of us can make all the difference between a smart future and a stupid future. And I'm saying this because I started talking about Buenos Aires and some technologies I've seen there because I wanted to lead to a discussion of the so-called smart city, right? So I'm sure many of you have been reading about smart cities. And we look at innovation. I haven't yet made a formal study of how many mayors in big cities have said, we're going to be a smart city, right? And everything's going to be smart. Your electricity meter is smart. It already is in many countries. The power station is smart. The water generation is smart. Go to Nice in France and you'll begin to get an idea. Because the buses are smart. The signs on public buildings are smart. And you just take out your phone. And it's very convenient, isn't it? You walk out of home, you go bleep, you get on the tram, and you've just put your phone. You've used NFC technology, gone bleep, you got on the tram. You got off the tram, you stopped at the supermarket, bought something, bleep, and off you go. You stopped in front of a public building, there's an explanation. Put it in front of the barcode, bleep, and off you go. You get to the office, you go bleep, and you go into the office. But in reality, people are not thinking about the underlying technological infrastructure. They haven't thought about the fact that in order to do that, the public utilities company had to have an agreement with Orange, with Vodafone. They had to have an agreement with the tram company. They had to have an agreement with the banks. They had to have an agreement in order to make all this work. And all of these leave traces. Now, in many cases, we get this fallacious argument is, if you have nothing to hide, then what's the problem? But that's baloney, isn't it? I mean, we all go to the bathroom, do we? We all know what happens inside the bathroom. But do we close the door? Because with all due respect, when it comes to privacy, there are some things which are private, and there are some things which we choose not to be private. And there are some things which we choose to be private. The point is, will technology rob us of the choice of what is private and what remains private? And this is why, when it comes to, for example, we happen to be talking about it here in Buenos Aires, we're talking about Buenos Aires as a smart city. I go to Amsterdam or The Hague and I see the campaign to make it a smart city. I go to Vienna, it's going to be a smart city. And they're all going to be smart, the cities that is, but not us necessarily. And my appeal here is that it's a bit like ice cream. If you eat a little bit or carefully, it's not going to kill you. But if you are careless about it, then you are going to run risks that you don't want to run. And technology is the same. I'm a techie. I'm very happy as a techie. I've spent most of my life designing techie solutions. Techie solutions for banks, techie solutions for airlines, techie solutions for the police, techie solutions for intelligence services. So I only have to point the finger at myself. I just love technology, just love it. Even my hobbies are all technology related. But that being said, for more than 35 years now, I've also worked in technology law. And in technology law, now this is already an innovation, you know? I mean, the fact that today students can go and study technology law is something that Manfred and I couldn't do when we weren't students. And unfortunately, more than half the universities in Europe, I don't know about Argentina, you still can't do technology law as a compulsory subject. But think about technology and law for a minute. And think of how we can either use, as Manfred was saying, technology, in Olivia's case, to monitor human rights and check that people are saying the truth, or the extent to which we are going to rob ourselves of choice. So as a techie lawyer and as a software engineer, my appeal is a simple one. Let's just do things wisely. Let's not use smartphones and smart cities in a stupid manner, because then the technology will be smart, but we will be dumb. And it's just a pity if we were to go in that direction. This is why my mandate is working so hard to try to make sure that we take the right decisions. That when it comes to children and online behavior on the internet, how should children behave, the extent to which, what do you start first, sex education or online behavior education, right? I'm clear in this. I have no problems with starting sex education at 7 or 6, though in some countries they'll shoot me for saying that, but only on condition that we start online education at the age of 4 or 5, because the kids are out there using the technologies faster and more freely than anybody. And the same applies to corporations and their use of data, and the same applies to surveillance. Unfortunately, the technology is so powerful that, as I was saying first, if you want to become a dictator, you need much less people to do it with. Because first of all, if you're clever enough to use the same kind of technologies that Cambridge Analytica did, you can manipulate people much more easily. Someday I think I should write the book, The Art of the Subtle Dictator, right? Because the technology can permit you to do that. And on the other hand, if citizens realize that they don't want that, then they can cleverly use the law to protect their fundamental human rights. So it's not a matter of not using technology to have surveillance, it's a matter of making sure that the law and the state provide the right safeguards against surveillance. It's not a matter of not allowing Google or Facebook to collect data, it's a matter of making sure that the safeguards are in place to make sure that the data is not abused. So my message is a positive one. The fact that we're here and discussing it is a very healthy thing. The fact that we can realize that we can put in the safeguards and the remedies is a very healthy thing. The complex task is how we do it, right? Because the beautiful subject, and both Manfred and I are professors, and I always tease the professors of Roman law. And I tell them, you have a really nice subject. It hasn't moved since the codes of Justinian, so you can take the rest of life as a holiday, right? Whereas when I wake up in the morning in technology law, I have 500 new things to read, and I can barely cope, with the amount of new things we have going in the subject. I'm saying this, half jokingly, but I'm saying this because I'm dead serious about it. I'm dead serious because it goes so fast that if we had to clone technology lawyers the world around, we still can't cope with coming up with the right solutions. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to stop here and hopefully we can have some discussion. Thank you.